plus or minus happy face, we'll see, really becomes, what do you guys think? It's in reverse. See this here? It's going to be triangle times my square plus my triangle times that happy face, okay? Do you guys remember this property? Okay. Some people look at it this way. They'll say my triangle has to be multiplied to the square. Here it is, triangle times square. And my triangle also has to be multiplied to the what? To the happy face. Here it is here. And don't forget, you have your addition. This is my addition. And this also works if you had subtraction as well. So here's your distributive property. Okay. So just to show you, it's working in reverse here. You're taking 2, you're multiplying it with x. To get 2x, you take your 3, multiply it with x. To get your what? 3x. To get your 3x. Okay. So for example, three times 4x plus 5. The use of the distributive property is still under the category, in my mind, of simplifying. Okay? You're still simplifying. You're simplifying in the sense that you are removing this parentheses, and you're making this whole expression look simpler. And so how you remove the parentheses is use your distributive property. Okay? Now, I show my students in 112, or whatever that course is, 110. What I show them, and I'll write it up here, is what I call the picture of the distributive property. You guys want to see the picture? Yes. Okay. Think of this first term as your row, and this the next two terms as your columns. And so I'll draw row 3. With how many columns? The 4x column and the plus 5 column. You guys okay with this? So this is my 1 row and my 2 columns here. Okay? Now what you do with the distributive property is you take the row and multiply it with all of your columns. So that 3 times 4x is what? Isn't that 12x? And then 3 times 5, what's that? Isn't that 15? And the 15's positive? So write down what you have. That's going to be 12x plus what? Plus 15. And you applied the distributive property. You removed your parentheses here. And so some classes, some instructors will put these arrows and say, use the distributive property by taking 3 times 4x, gives you what? 12x, and then 3 times 5 gives you your what? 15. Okay, you removed your parentheses. Okay, you guys okay with that? Okay, remember that using distributive property in Math 112? I know the Math 112 students I had, of course, we did that, a lot of it. Okay, so again, these are some of the things you want to come back, some of the tools you want to come back with and take in algebra. So let's see. How about this? See what you guys get. What if it was a negative 2 times an x minus 7? Okay, what do you get now? Yeah. I don't know. Do you guys like this picture of distributive property? Take the row here, negative 2. You like that? What are your columns then? X and what? Negative 7, okay. Take the negative 2 row, multiply it to x. The negative 2 row, multiply it to negative 7. Negative 2 times x is? Negative 2 times negative 7 is? So what's the answer? It's negative 2x plus what? Plus 14. Okay? You are using the distributive property here. Okay, and again, this is all under the context of what? Simplifying. Okay? You're simplifying these terms. You guys ready for another example? Should we make it easy or hard? Hard? Not too hard? What would you do here? Uh-oh. We're going to have to simplify these terms. How do you simplify this? What's the problem? What do you guys see now? There's two sets of what? Of parentheses. Is that right? So how do you get rid of the parentheses? Distributive property. Does anybody notice anything about this example?
There's like terms.
Did you guys notice anything?
Yeah, there's like terms.
Well, what is it? Have you seen it before?
Yeah.
Isn't that the prior two examples? This example and what?
Combined. Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. What do we get when we use the distributive property here? This is 12x plus what? Plus 15. Is that true? 12x plus 15? You guys okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah. See that there? And then what's the other one? That's a negative 2x. Plus 14. So you get rid of your you get rid of your parentheses one at a time by your distributive property. So now that the parentheses are gone, this does look simpler, but we can actually make it even more simpler by doing what? Combining your like terms. Okay, so these are your apples. You got 12 apples plus $15. You owe 2 apples plus $14. What's the story now with your fruit and money? Good, you got 10 apples. Good. And how much money do you have? Is it 19? 29. Good. Doesn't that look simpler? You have simplified. And that'll be your instructions to simplify these terms. You guys know where we're headed with this stuff, right? Anybody have an idea? Where do you think we're headed? Really, what happens next after you simplify, you become experts? What happens? Yes. We now talk about solving equations. And some of your equations will look pretty what? Scary like this, where you have to simplify to solve them. That's the whole idea. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of how it all works. Especially in my mind, is before you solve equations, you have to learn how to simplify, and use your distributive property. Let's give you an example. 6 times x minus 4 minus x plus 2. Okay, so what happens now by that distributive property?